What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. Last week we ended up on 4 out of 4 in terms of the calls that we made last week. We accurately predicted that things were still going to continue going up and that they would continue going up aggressively. And throughout the entirety of last week, I gave you guys the exact setups on an intraday basis just to get into trades, and we have managed to quite literally call the bottom on quite a few of them. And so this week is also going to be an interesting one. Now, it's not going to be as easy as last week, I don't think, just because of how price action is kind of shaping up at the moment. Just to give you an idea, right now, we've swept above the Asia high during London. This is usually a sign that the Asia was accumulation, London was manipulation, and followed, well, this is usually followed by distribution after the fact. So not the best sign at the moment, but I'm going to give you guys the breakdown from the higher time frames, understanding the macro, understanding what's happening on the daily. And fun fact, the US just managed to negotiate a trade deal with China. I'm going to get into that in just a tiny bit, and I'm going to explain to you how that's going to affect price. So last week we were 4 out of 4 in terms of our calls, which brings our total amount of wins to 51 wins and about 12 losses, I believe. So that's 63. Currently we are sitting well over above an 80% win rate. And so to those of you who are new to the channel, or just understand that you're in the right place, and I tend to be right more often than I'm wrong. So China has now cut tariffs on the US from 125% to 10% for 90 days. So currently there is still a lot of uncertainty going on in terms of the tariffs. And the only thing you need to understand is that as long as this pause on, these tariffs are in place, then crypto, or other risk on assets, are going to have an environment where they can continue to thrive. And the moment these, and so it doesn't really matter. And so for now, the only thing that matters to us is that how long is this going to last? For example, one of the things that we can see today right off the get-go, in fact, just within the last hour, because this news was released just in the last hour, so the dollar index has already started pumping. And this is usually a really terrible sign for Bitcoin, because usually the higher the DXY goes, the lower Bitcoin goes. And currently this deal seems to favor the US. And so I think that based on this news, as well as how price action is kind of shaping up, I think we're going to go for a brief, tiny little pause in an overall uptrend. So just to explain what I mean, in terms of the weekly chart, you are still very much towards the bullish direction. So just to explain what I mean, on the weekly chart, you're very much in the bullish direction, right? Not only is market structure, but order flow is also confirming this, which means that the previous all-time high is going to remain the target until the foreseeable future. Unless some groundbreaking event shakes up everything, then that is going to be the target at the very minimum. Which means that now that we understand the trend, ultimately it's still going to target there. If we get a short-term immediate retracement, it will just be, as the name suggests, a retracement before price moves towards the upside. And so now, based on last week's candle, it was closed very, very bullish. And right now, this entirety, the entirety of this box right here is known as a imbalance in terms of price. And we can further refine this on the daily chart to all the way down here. So basically, it wouldn't be a surprise for Bitcoin to actually retrace into this area from these, tariff news. And with the DXY, kind of going up right now, wouldn't be surprising to retrace into here before ultimately continuing the move to the previous all-time high. Now, this could happen this week. This could also happen next week. And the key thing that we want to look at here is news, because the more news there's more of a reason for price to be volatile, and there is more of a reason for things to happen. And we can see that Tuesday we have CPI, Thursday we also have a lot of USD news, and Friday we have more USD news. So this week is definitely full of news, and that's a really good sign, which means that I wouldn't be surprised if you see some kind of first half retracement during the week before continuing towards the upside. This is, again, taking into account the macro conditions, such as the DXY currently pumping. Again, the DXY is also in an overall downtrend, and it until you break above this block right here, you are still within an overall downtrend, right? Because this could just be an order block retracement before you continue making new lows, which also kind of lines up with the theory that, hey, Bitcoin, we wouldn't be surprised if we saw a short-term retracement before the move continues. Same thing for the DXY. And for those of you who, again, do not understand, the DXY and Bitcoin tends to move in, well, they're inversely correlated assets, which means that when the DXY goes up, Bitcoin tends to go down. The reason for this is because Bitcoin is denominated against the USD. It would only make sense that if USD goes up, Bitcoin goes down, right? It's a very oversimplified explanation, but of course there are many more variables that go into this, but in short, right, that's how it works. Right now, due to this news from Trump managing to negotiate a decent deal on the tariffs, it also means that confidence is going to return back to the US dollar. It's also the reason why the DXY is going up, which again kind of lines up with the narrative that we've built up so far. So taking a look at the daily chart, yesterday's daily candle closed bearish, which means that it wouldn't be surprising if you actually went bearish. And the thing that I really want to touch on is the fact that right now you have just broke above, or rather you have swept above the Asia highs. And usually when this happens, again, this tends to be accumulation, manipulation, distribution, which means the move for today is more likely than not going to be towards the downside. Now, I will discuss how you can take advantage of that downside move, but also discuss like what is the potential for this downside scenario to get invalidated. So to kick things off first, we're going to start on the 1 hourly time frame. Immediately right off the get-go, you will see that there are a lot of relatively equal lows over here, which means that ideally you really do not want this block to be broken below. In fact, I'm going to draw out this block right here. Ideally, for price to continue to the bullish side, you want to see price hold this block and not break below it. Because if you break below it, then you're going to sweep up all of these relatively equal lows, fill in the Fibonacci gap, right? Just like what we discussed just now. And I think that there is a higher likelihood that this happens more than price just actually, pumping from straight, like from here on outwards. Then if we can further refine this down to just today, this is going to be the block that matters. So let's head on to the 5-minute chart so I can give you a better, or rather clearer picture. At the moment, price is going to just, sweep all of these relatively equal lows, potentially retrace somewhere here, and then during the New York session, you're going to head towards the downside. That will be the plan until otherwise proven. Now, what is the scenario that would prove this otherwise? It's if you retrace back into this block and price starts showing a willingness to head towards the upside. Then that would mean that instead of an AMD kind of profile, you will get Asia, London breaks above Asia, comes back, retrace, and then trend continuation. Again, I think that this scenario is a little less likely to happen. I think more likely scenario here is that price goes down, which means that if, after the cutover moment that I'm filming this, it's 4 a.m. during New York, when you get closer to 7 to 10 a.m. New York, if you see a break underneath the Asia lows and then price somehow retraces into the middle here, right, into either one of these like Fibonacci gaps, then that will be your setup for the day, right? It's not about just price action, it's also reading price action based on what is happening in terms of time. There are certain behaviors in price that price tends to repeat at certain times of the day, and one of those times is definitely the New York session, which is why we trade during the fill zones. So today the setup is most likely, more likely than not, going to be that. In terms of the 1 hourly, we have absolutely zero, points of interest that we can go off of. So the only thing here is, going off of the 5-minute. Now again, the thing that will invalidate this is if you retrace back into this order block and if you start showing signs of life. In this case, it's going to be really tough for me to tell you where this is going to go. But again, just purely based off the DXY, based on what I'm seeing right now, unless this starts reversing all of a sudden, I think it's going to be more likely than not that we are going to head towards the downside. Now, kind of like a bullish scenario that you can think of is that once you fill in order block right here, if you can manage to break above this block, you can try to look for this to act as potential support and for price to continue heading higher. But again, this is kind of like a lower probability setup. So maybe tomorrow will be the better day for longs, but I think in terms of today, it's either, you look for a short, or it's kind of like a no trade day, because it's going to take quite a lot for price to actually continue the bullish direction. Now, the best case scenario for bulls, by the way, is if you fill in this block and you just pump straight up. Right? If you do that, if you can confidently break above this block right here, absolutely, price retrace here, and boom, that's going to be the bullish scenario, the ideal bullish scenario. But either way, guys, if you would like to work with me one-on-one, where I get you from zero, or rather where you're at right now, to funded within the next 60 days, feel free to click the first link in the description box below. This is not going to be some signals group. It's not going to be some coaching program. You're working with me one-on-one, and I'm going to get you to that finish line within 60 days. If you're serious about taking the next step in your trading, then check it out. First link in the description box below. Otherwise, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.